Hey, everybody. Good morning. And welcome to another episode of Awaken Your Relationships. I am Julie Murphy, and Rita and I are here because it's time for us to love ourselves and hold these super healthy boundaries that will, in the end, always give you what you desire, but also know it may not come in the package that you expect.
Oh,
Right?
absolutely. But it's always at the end of it, always worth taking those risks.
Oh, there's no doubt. Because, I'll tell you, I've been at those places where it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm like, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. Because I was finally claiming myself, right? I was finally actually doing what was okay with me. So I sat through a great example of this yesterday. I sat through a co-parenting counseling session, and I was holding the boundaries, and it's not my business where that lands for him, right? I just said, you know what? I am more than happy to pay my half and do my half. What I'm no longer willing to do is to fix it when you've not done what you need to do on your end to take care of half. And it's okay that we hold those boundaries, because my fear, so right, our fear kicks in. My fear was that my kids were not going to be cared for at the level that I desire for them to be cared for.
Would you
And
would you like let me throw in just a little side thing with that,
that would be great.
which I think is really good. I think we as women do have a tendency to look at men and think that they're incapable of holding up their end of a bargain.
That's a great
And
point.
so the, we tend to get concerned or sensitive or angry or overwhelmed when they balk at doing their responsibility. But in reality, by holding that situation, it gives them the opportunity to rise up like they want to. We
Hmm.
have to believe in men. We have to believe that men are capable of changing, and they've got the resources
Right.
available to them, because they sure don't believe in themselves, because otherwise they wouldn't be struggling with meeting their commitments.
Right. Yeah, there's no there that is I have experienced exactly what you're talking about. That I knew, there are some spiritual teachers out there that say that the divine feminine needs to lead the masculine. And the inequity that we have in society today is the fact that women have not stepped into their power. Like, so many women want to blame that we don't have equality, and we don't have this, but women, and being one, we've not stepped into our power. That's why we're not getting paid the same salaries, because we're not willing to tell an employer to go jump in the lake. Like, I'm worth it, pay me. Men do that
and
all the
and
time.
we don't believe that we can go out there and get a better paying job,
Right, right. And
because if
so,
we
but we have to understand that
could,
when,
then we would do it.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Oh, yeah, if we really believed we could,
Mhm.
then we'd be doing it.
Oh, there's no doubt. And it's no doubt in, like, and then, so that's the money side. Then we flip it around and we go to um, our side of the equation, and we say, okay, so if I sat there and said on the relationship side, okay, I'm going to step into my power and say, I'm no longer willing to do more than my half as a parent, right? Then that creates, so the dynamic between my ex-husband and I was always, I was the second oldest of 12. He was the baby of 4. I knew how to mother, he knew how to be taken care of. That's exactly what our dynamic was. And then you add in our traumas from our childhood, just even complicated
So
that
you
that
set
much.
a boundary for yourself. You said
Correct.
for yourself, my boundary for me to protect me is I am no longer willing to give more than my half. I'm respecting myself by setting a boundary of what I'm willing to experience.
Correct. And then wherever that lands, that's not my business. There's all kinds of things that go through my head going, how can this even be an issue with him with the alimony that I pay? But that's not my business. Like, to me, it's like, that doesn't matter. It's just about the fact that he's going to either choose to step into it or choose not to step into it. And that's none of my business. But my business was, what is the healthy thing for me in that boundary holding?
Mm-hmm.
and allow it to shake itself out.
Yeah. The neat thing about our conscious mind is only able to take in or be aware of so much information. Around us, we're absorbing information in millions and trillions of bits. And our conscious mind is only a couple tablespoons of gray matter in the front of our head. It
Mhm.
only has so many receptors for information
Right.
from our body and from our environment and energetically. So we have to choose what we want to focus on. And if
Mhm.
we focus on what is in my best interests, and I trust in the universe that the other person will get what's in their best interests in order to help them grow, if I believe in that, then I can relax and open up and only focus on what I need to focus on. And the other stuff just sort of disappears because I don't have any more room to think about their issues because I'm
Right.
focused on my issues. What we do is we focus on their issues and use up all the headspace. So there's no room to think about ours. And we need to flip it where we're thinking about ours
Right.
and allowing other people to go through whatever human miraculous process they're going through that I can't possibly know because it's way bigger than I'll ever know. Their time, their direction, their person, their order. I don't know. My job is to say, I know you can do this. You're going to do great.
Mhm.
That's my job.
And that's not an easy task when when you have in the past behaved in the complete opposite manner,
Yes.
right?
That's the struggle, isn't it? How do we
That is
believe
the
in
challenge.
people who how do we set boundaries so people can't take advantage of us while they're going through their process of struggle and failure and
That
you
you
know
nailed it right there.
we have
Yeah.
to be able to love ourselves and love them and respect ourselves and respect them enough to allow them to go through their process and not allow them to hurt us at the same time.
That's a big statement right there.
Mhm.
Because so there's a couple things that are interwoven in that. And that is you don't personalize when they are going through their stuff. And it's not like there won't be lashing out. There will be lashing out because human beings throw temper tantrums even as adults when they don't get the same thing that they've always gotten from somebody else.
Well, and what tends to happen on the body mind level is when we're traumatized, let's say at age 4, the emotions are huge because
Yeah,
our
right.
brain can't process it. If they're not
Right.
big enough, we don't have the ability to process it. We're overstimulated. So
Right.
anything that we feel is like magnified by 100. And
Right.
then we go through life and we learn how to deal with things. We get some self esteem. But every time that 4-year-old button is pressed, we experience the same level of pain and drama that we experienced when it first happened. And it makes us
Exactly.
behave in that same way because the emotions are so big and so difficult to, they're overwhelming,
So true.
you know? And people have to be allowed to detox that out, but I don't have to allow them to hurt me in the process.
I don't have to be the detox.
Right. Right. I can put things in place that help me
I'm not
protect
your
me.
sauna. I'm not your steam room. I'm not your sweat
Exactly.
lodge.
Exactly. I'm not your sweat lodge. I'm none of that. I'm
That's so true. Oh my God. How many of you guys out there listening feel like you're somebody else's steam room? Like they're blowing their steam right on you. And you're like, whoa.
yeah, all of their anger. Here's the thing with being empathic, and we all have a level of empathy, but most of the women that follow you and I have higher levels of empathy.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
We
Right.
confuse the feelings that are coming off of someone else, that they're radiating, that they're, literally, affecting the charge around them. We're feeling that charge.
Yeah.
We can't determine whether what we're feeling is ours, is our legitimate feeling, or is somebody else's.
Yeah. That's true.
that's very confusing for all of us, because you feel something and you think it's yours, and then you try to come up with a story around it that doesn't match because it's not yours.
So true.
And then we end up in a place where we're constantly blaming ourselves and thinking it's our fault.
Right. Well, and because, you know, when you're a person who's in the solution business, like you want to always find the solution and you're trying to make your way. And I know so many women who have been like, they've rolled up their sleeves, they're ready to go, and they keep going up the hill. And then it's like, oh, hit down a little bit of the hill. And then they go back up the hill. And then, so we're used to just blocking and tackling. But I got to tell you, ladies, that is the masculine way of doing it. This is where we're not owning our feminine.
And it takes forever. That's the problem. We spend lifetimes, and in the past we've spent lifetimes
Yeah.
hitting that wall and then going back down, getting our energy back and going back up and hitting that wall again.
Ugh,
Breaks
right?
us and it snaps you in two. The feminine way is to be efficient and smart and not use your ego to get through it, and just release the emotions in the body. And there's thousands of ways to do that, but release the emotions in the body so that you have the wherewithal, the energy, the confidence, the core to set the boundaries in the first place, because you're not being triggered so hard. If you can
Right.
get triggered less or not be triggered at all, if you didn't get triggered by your husband not holding up his half, then it wouldn't have mattered whether he did it, whether he didn't do it. You'd just be able to look through it and say, oh, I wonder what he's learning, and I wonder what I need to do to make sure this turns out okay for me.
Well, and I really truly see, I can say this now. I definitely would have said this 3 years ago, but he's one of my best teachers. And so like because of things that happened in my childhood, I had an enormous not enough button, right? Like I was always trying to prove. That's why I was a perfectionist. That's why I always excelled at everything, because I was trying to prove that I was enough. Because my father, when I was younger, said, you should have been born a boy because you're good at things. And
And
that hardwired into my system.
and then
And
you
I could never, I mean, I could have surgery and have a penis, but in
yeah, you can
his
talk.
mind, I've got a vagina, and that's not going to work in his world. And, and my dad, he absolutely loves me, and I'm the apple of his eye. But in his mind, men went out and got the job, and the women were barefoot and pregnant home. And he was given a daughter that's the complete opposite of that. That, and that was what he was trying to resolve in himself. That had nothing to do with me, because he was so perplexed why I was successful, why I went to Notre Dame, all the things he wanted his sons to do, his daughter did. And he can't figure that out. And I now know that, at 48 years old, I get it, right? But it was interesting, my not enough button, my ex-husband has been a golden nugget for me, if you will, in the fact that he presses that button like nobody's business. And I have him to thank on so many levels, because it's pretty much healed. Like
So I want to bring another little side insight to this, which is you've been scanning your environment ever since your dad impressed that message on you. You've been scanning your environment for not enough.
Mhm.
You've been looking for things that represent to you, I'm not enough. So it really didn't matter what your ex-husband would have done or not done. He would have, just by being himself and maybe trying to tell you something else, like I'm scared or I'm angry, um, you were scanning for it, and so it wouldn't really matter what anybody would have said. You would have seen it anyways, because it was your reaction to something that is way bigger than you and you don't really understand.
Right.
So he didn't really come along and push your buttons. It's more like you were sending
I,
tendrils
I,
out.
I was, my radar was out there for it.
Yes, you were
Yeah.
sending your radar out
Totally.
and picking up signals that he probably, wasn't trying to say you aren't enough. He was probably glad that that's how it
Yeah.
landed. But that wasn't his thought process. He was coming
Right.
from someplace else.
Right. Well, and then there's a beauty to that. It's kind of like when you buy a certain car, then all of a sudden you see that car all over the road.
Mhm,
Like, I think that's a great way for people to kind of think about that and what that bridge is,
mhm.
right? And so it's so true. And when you heal that, because our outside world reflects what's going on inside. I think that's another way to say that per se.
Yeah,
And
we see what we expect to see.
right. So this is where the vibration of your thoughts and your words and your feelings are so important, that you're putting out the feelings and the thoughts. And I think about, even, my kids transitioned back to my house yesterday, and they were all ramped up. They were ready to be defensive because of various reasons. And so I literally physically, just like my one son, 6 years old, he was getting all feisty, start talking nasty to me, and I just sat on the floor, like, so that he was standing like taller than me, because I sat on the floor and I go, Michael, honey, I don't want to fight with you, sweetheart. I go, can we have a conversation about this? Because I really want to hear your voice, but I don't want to do it fighting. He literally just came and sat on his lap and he's like, Mom. And then it was just a very normal conversation. So I know a year ago, I was ready for the battle. They'd come in and they'd talk to me in a nasty way and everything, because that's what was just happening where they were. And and I was like, "Oh, if I show up differently, then they'll show up differently and they'll mirror that." And that literally my household has been a petri dish testing this over the last, because I knew I wanted to stop doing it with masculine push energy. I wanted to do it in a loving, still hold the healthy boundaries, right? Because it's not okay for my kids to talk to me in a nasty manner. But in the same token, no different than in a relationship. I don't want somebody to be disrespectful and even saying like, "Oh, it's just a joke." It's not funny. You're talking to me in a disrespectful manner, even though you say it's a joke. And so it's been interesting to me that when I shifted in the inside and started to say things, no matter how anyone responded to me, I still stayed in my power and communicated it in the love and compassion that I want to communicate. And it's not that I'm perfect. I mean, I'm still learning it, but it's been fascinating to me to watch how fast it shifts when you internally shift.
Right. And the biggest challenge is that I hear from women is they say, "Yeah, but in the moment, how do you pause and shift something?" Because the emotions, the felt sense are so fast and so hard. And
Agreed.
I want women and men to realize that you're not trying to shift it intellectually. You're trying to shift it energetically. And that's what you want. If
So,
we want to shift ourselves, not from a I need to think something different, which is what's pounded into us from the male side of personal growth. You need to think something different. Your thoughts are creating everything. We need to change our felt sense. One of the tools that I use is when I feel my emotion coming up,
yep.
negative thought, tension, resistance, irritation. I purposely look at things in my environment and remember a positive experience I have associated with it. Like,
Mm,
I'll look at my carpet and say, you know what? I'm really glad that I have carpet because I hate cold, bare floors. And I remember when I bought that lamp, I was with so and so. And you know what? That was a lot of fun. And I really love that picture that I picked on my wall. It's such a magnificent piece of art.
mm,
When we choose to change our energy, and I do it by focusing on something that enlivens me and reminds me of my gratitude,
right.
that's how we flip out of the sympathetic and into the parasympathetic very quickly. You can't do it very easily through your thoughts. You have to do it by focusing and feeling something different, telling your body it's safe enough to be happy, it's safe enough to be free. And that's when the emotions physically start to detox off your body and you get triggered less and less and less. And then you come up with these great insights
Right.
that you did of, oh, it was never my fault in the first place. But 6 months ago, you would have still reacted with that rage
Right.
and been overwhelmed and then guilty or angry at yourself or frustrated or, disassociated, instead of being able to say, oh yeah, this doesn't, it's not so strong that I feel I have to give into it, that I have no force of will or no thoughts of my own. I don't have to give into this feeling because it's not overtaking me.
So can I share, because I think it's important for people who are watching that, so in my process, I agree with 100% of what you're talking about, and the fact that in the moment, it's like, but it happens. And then afterwards, you're like, oh, what did I just do? I know better, like, blah, blah. So my journey in that was, yeah, trust me, you come at me with fire, I'm a Sagittarius. I'm going to fire right back at you. That is a very natural response for me. So what I started to do because I was then witnessing how I would blow in the moment because I wouldn't know exactly how to respond in that moment because I'm like, shift my energy. Like that was like, I get it, but I don't know how to physiologically do that because it's such a trigger and it's so instant and it's so like I go from 0 to 60, really fast. And so what I started to do is first it started with, I go, okay, that didn't really come out the way that I wanted to, because I could then recover really quickly and just be like, okay, that didn't come out the way that I wanted to. I absolutely can see how that's offensive. And so I would try to shift it like right after. That's how it started. That's how I started. Once I could observe it, then I would try to shift it right away as opposed to like days or hours.
Yeah, because you can't
And then,
stop reacting. You're going to react no matter
right,
what. You can't
right.
stop that. You can only shift it and detox it, and then the next time you react less.
Right. And so what's happened to me, this less continues to happen to where the other day I had an example that was occurring. And I watched myself that I was like, I knew I was in all those places. I witnessed that I was triggered. But so then I started doing the things that I do that I learned at 22 years old and working with clients. I sat back in my chair. I put my feet up on another chair. I completely uncrossed my legs. And I said, okay, I see what you're saying. And I was in the midst of the trigger, but I was physically moving my body in different ways. And what it really boiled down to, the thing that was happening in the moment, is that I was super sad that over the last 5 days, I had all this stuff coming at me about how terrible of a mom I was. And my kids are avoiding it and not calling me, not returning my phone calls, anything. So it was the sadness that was coming up in me that I hadn't talked to my kids in 5 days. And it made me sad because they're just ducking and covering of what is going on, just no different than me by blocking phone calls, right? Like, I don't want to hear it either, but they're in the house where that's happening. And so, in that moment where I could sit back and put my feet up, then I allowed the actual feelings for what was actually going on. Because it wasn't what was going on in the moment. It was actually that the sadness had built up over 5 days. But I could move it right then and there. And that is happening. I just want people to hear that are watching that it does happen. It does transition. And it starts with you going, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. I want something different. I want a better outcome. And I'm not really sure how to get there. I just know that I want it. And that's where it starts. That's where it starts to crack open. And I am telling you that as you address this and as you create space, it happens. And it's, one step at a time. And don't judge yourself if you still blow, because it's okay. It took layers and years for it to get there, and it might take some time for it to go away. All I do is keep setting the intention that it happens sooner than later. And it is. I mean, it's becoming my reality. And then that's also teaching the tools to not only my kids, but other people who are in my life that, yeah, I'm not the Julie that's gonna lose her cool and, and So it's really interesting that as we continue to lay the foundation um, for the life that you want to create, you just have to remember your thoughts, your words, and your feelings all create your tomorrow. So make sure they're the ones that you want to create.
Yes, we get trapped in the idea of, well, I just thought it. Why don't I have it?
Right.
Because you're shaping your future.
Part in between.
We're planting the seeds for in Native American culture for the next 7 generations. In
Yep.
In our lives, we're planting the seeds for the next step, the next thing that we'd like to achieve or the next level. But we have to plant the seeds today and then nurture it and take care of it. We're a garden, but we get so overwhelmed by how we feel that we want the solution now because the feeling is so uncomfortable.
Right.
And we have to start, instead of suppressing all those feelings, doing something, learning how to change our own nervous system so that we can feel the stuff that we've been ignoring that's been hurting us most of our lives. And when we do something where we allow the space to hear what we really have to say, that's authenticity. And then when we talk to people, we feel the same way as what we're saying. And it's not angry and it's not attacking, it's authentic. And then they have to decide how they want to respond to that authenticity. And we have to respect them that they have the right to do that too.
Right.
That's how we evolve and grow as the universe wants us to, instead of as we've decided we're going to, come hell or high water.
Right.
It's a more nourishing, feminine way of doing it.
Absolutely. There's no doubt. There is no doubt. And you know what? You just have to believe that you deserve it and that you want it. And that's when it starts to shift and change. I had the example of that this week. I practice what I preach, and I teach my clients to do the same. And I had a client this week who actually held those boundaries and held that space of what was true for her. And the guy walked out. And I'm sitting here going, fabulous. And she's like, I don't feel fabulous. And I'm like, but that is so great, because you are stepping into your power and you're going, I'm not okay with that. You're actually validating your feelings. You're taking them into account. You're not trying to make something happen that isn't supposed to happen. But she had finally found that soul connection. And she was like, oh my God, this feels so different than any other connection that I've ever had. And I said, you know what? But this is beautiful. I said, you have no idea what this outcome is going to be. He may go and do his work. And even though the last 2 months have been like so sad for you that he just walked, you have no idea what's going to happen next month or the month after that. You just keep going and being you and keep being authentic. And then everything that align, and hold the intention that you really want this partner in your life, of that person who walks with you, not somebody you drag along the way because you take care of everybody else. And another proof of that was, she also shared with me how the father of her children actually, for 10 years post-divorce, just like everything, attack, trying to put the kids on his side of the camp and not hers, and try to turn the kids against her. Like, it's been 10 years of a struggle. So here she holds this boundary and is authentic with the boyfriend. And then what happens? The ex-husband finally decides to marry the girlfriend and completely ignores her now. Like, it shifted with the ex-husband when she held her boundary with the boyfriend. Like, because your energy changes, everything in your life shifts, because she no longer is vibrating at the level of needing that trauma in her life from her ex-husband. And it's like,
we're not as sensitive. We're not as sensitive to the energy coming at us. And so because we're not as sensitive, it can sort of wash over us, and we're not pushing back. We're not making more of it happen or reacting overly to it. It's like we see it through a different lens.
right.
And because we see it differently, it changes. We changed what we're seeing. And because we changed what we're seeing, then something different was allowed to happen. So he
Totally.
probably wanted to marry his girlfriend a long time ago, and
Right.
but she was her
Well,
anger and
his
hurts and
his
was just kept pulling him back.
well, his energy was still connected to the ex, and the new bride to be didn't like that. It's like, let go of her. Like, forget it so we can go move on.
Mhm. And
And
she had to energetically let go of the need to keep him around. And when she
oh, it's
no
beautiful.
longer needed to keep him around,
I
that
know.
he was given permission and allowed to go and live his life and leave her alone. It
Yep.
reminded me of when I dated my husband for 7.5 years before he proposed, and we met in college, and we all, we had all these friends, and they were giving him crap, and his family was giving him crap, and and he was resisting, he was holding out, and I was angry and hurt, and you're not marrying me, and why aren't you marrying me? And I'd react in a little bit of bristly or confrontational way, even if I didn't say anything. Clearly I was hurt, and that
Right.
triggered in him his not good enough, and so he didn't want to propose because he didn't feel good enough to propose. And then
Oh,
when I was able to say to myself, you know what, this relationship isn't going anywhere, I don't have to be afraid, I don't have to react in the same way or feel the same way about it, it created some space
yeah.
for
That
a
is what it's
shift to
about.
happen. Yeah, it took pressure off of the people around you. So
Right.
when we're okay with us, it stops irritating the connections and bonds we have with other people, and it allows them to kind of maybe settle down and come up with what's right for them.
Yep. Yep. That's so true. And so again, it goes back to holding the vision of what you want in your life,
And this is
right?
true whether it's in business. I've been talking to women a lot lately about the fear of not making what they're worth, or not asking for a raise, or not charging more in the marketplace.
Right.
They've had this fear, um, and when you put down the fear, when you detox, when you uncross your legs and walk into a different room and look out the window and say, oh, what a beautiful day, that's putting down the fear. When you
Right.
put down that fear, then you show up differently to everything that you do, and people
Mhm.
respond different. Now you're saying, no, I absolutely am worth, $1,000 a month or $3,000 a month. I'm totally worth this.
Right.
Someone to coach with me or work with me. And people then now see you as someone that's worth that, because
Yep.
you're not coming at them with your fear, which they're feeling. They're feeling
Right.
your anxiety around it and reacting, thinking it's theirs. Whereas if you're not fearful about charging what you want to charge, then they won't be as fearful either.
Exactly. Right. And it's all about you feeling you deserve it. Like I talk to financial planners all the time, and the whole industry is set up to sell you product and then I'll help you. Right. And this is why most people don't like people in insurance and stuff like that. Right. And I decided, gosh, it was back in 2003 that I didn't want that relationship with clients. And so that's why I now charge a fee, So people write me a check and they get to utilize my knowledge base or my team's knowledge base. And I do that because it's an energy shift, and but when I coach other financial planners to actually do that, to make that change, that most of them can't even fathom doing it. And to me, I've realized it's a deserving button that, we hear all the time at like our conferences that you are just as important as the CPA and a person's doctor. But there is an underlying trait with so many financial planners that they don't feel they're at the level of the CPA or the attorney or the doctor. It's like they're a salesperson instead. Like it's a different professional level of professionalism. And and I'm like, no, 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 step into your greatness, step into who you are. And it's been fun for me to actually, more of the industry is shifting to that. But it's all, we all have this deserving button. And however that wired into us, as kids and particularly women, we deserve it all. And why is it that we feel like we don't? And I guess the why doesn't really matter. It's more about like But let's just get busy doing it and saying, I do deserve this, and I'm not really sure how it's going to show up, but I know I want it.
Yeah, you don't have to go into any story or figure out a
Right.
story or come up with a story, because our brains are really good at that. They're designed to come up with, some reason why we're feeling the way that we're
Stories are exhausting.
they are exhausting. Whereas, you know, there there are a lot of shortcuts. And
Hmm.
when you start taking these shortcuts to shifting your energy,
Right.
so that you can get these things off your body, big shifts happen in how you show up in the world. You become the person that you were always supposed to be if you weren't
Right.
traumatized. And like
Yep.
yesterday, I did some parts work with another coach. And what I realized was some of my fears that were coming up had to do with a very specific memory that I'd had when I was a child.
Right.
And the memory was, if I'm happy and carefree, something bad is going to happen to me,
Hmm.
because it was
And
right
then,
before the event. And I had been happy and carefree and making suns on paper with, little dandelions and out in the open air. It's these very deep memories and emotions, core beliefs that we developed when we were kids based on our own imaginary, you know, whose fault is it? Clearly it's my fault, or I can't be
right?
happy. Right. I can't be happy because as soon as I'm happy,
Oh,
then
it's so
everything's going to go
true.
bad. And that story or that belief gets layered on over the years. I don't deserve to make enough money. I don't deserve to stand up to my boyfriend. I don't
Right.
deserve to set boundaries. I don't
Exhausting.
deserve to ask for what I want. And it's really this deep core emotion that just needs to be witnessed. But we have to clear out the story first, get enough of the story out of the way so that we can witness that core emotion and let it go. And then suddenly one day, on one day you're like, oh my god, I can't charge. I'm worried people won't love me, they won't like me, how's this going to happen, I'm going to fail. And then by the very next day you're like, well, of course I can do this, why wouldn't I be able to do it? Because you're letting go of the core emotion that all of that story was based on, and you're doing it because while you're being triggered, you're walking to the window and noticing how beautiful the sky is. That's how you do it.
Yay.
And if you
That's
think you
so
can do it
true.
by yourself, you're nuts, because this stuff, because it takes like a Herculean effort sometimes to change the path you're on. And then you start feeling more and more, and you start being more authentic, and then people walk out and you don't know how to handle it, and then things turn pear-shaped and you don't know what to do. So it's always good to get coaching and support when you're doing this unpacking work.
Right. Well, because we all have our weak spots. And we all have, people will say to me, Julie, why do you pay these coaches? And blah, blah, blah. Like, because I'm like, I heard a long time ago when I filled out my personality profile that I operate better with a coach. And I would argue that most human beings do. And when you're stuck in your stuff, it's okay to receive support from somebody else.
Yeah,
It's
because they know
it-
more than you do usually about the subject.
right.
They've been doing it for X number of years. They've seen it in every iteration that is possible. I've worked with thousands of women. I know every way this shows up and every way to handle it. Nothing surprises me.
It's the same. Yeah, it's the same way on the money side. Like I see the patterns and I'm like, boop, 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 boop. Yeah, and I can get you through it that much faster. You
Mhm.
recreate all those debt cycles over and over again. I don't care if you make 50 grand a year or $1 million a year. It's the same patterns. It's just more zeros.
And it's not, and it shows up, as you always say, in your relationships. It shows up in all areas of your life. Because
Yeah,
if
sure
you've
does.
got core belief, let's say, one of mine was, if I'm happy, everything's going to go very wrong. Uh,
Right?
when you witness and feel and reassure and comfort and let go of that belief, that stuck emotion, you're able to take the steps you need to take, have the confidence you need to have in order to make changes in all areas of your life. It doesn't just change in one, it changes in everything. So if you fix the thing that's causing your relationship to go bad, you're going to make more money.
Yep. There's no doubt. Money is the result of everything else. It's like the year after I got divorced, the profit margins of my company went up 30%.
Yeah. You had more
And it's like,
focus.
and now it's double. And you sit there and go, it's only been 2.5 years. You sit there and go, wow. But he had nothing to do with the company. But my energy shifted.
Yeah. And
And
that's
so everything got
that's
lifted.
where most everybody gets it wrong in
So true.
in therapy, advising, coaching of the last, let's say 20, 30 years. You know, they get it wrong because they think, well, you need to check these things off of this checklist. And if you check these things off of the checklist, then things are going to be okay. But if you're still dealing with all of the emotions, you're only able to do everything on the checklist with only half your energy, or not quite, or not quite what's needed, or you won't have the insight, you won't have the clarity of the problem and deliver the right solution. You're going to be just throwing
Right.
spaghetti at a wall or darts at a dartboard, trying
Yep.
to figure it out, not knowing what's going on. So
No doubt.
it can't be about, here's the checklist, follow the checklist, you'll be fine. It has to be about, I need to shift how I feel about this topic.
Yep.
And how am I going to do it? I'm going to purposely do something that makes me feel differently and good.
Yep.
And physiologically what happens then is all sorts of cool chemical, brain, nervous system stuff happens. Your whole body physically changes. It goes from narrow blood vessels to wide blood vessels. It goes from a heart that's working too hard to a heart that's working just enough. It goes from a brain that looks like it's a percussion band that everybody's playing their own song to something by Beethoven.
Right.
You know, with your heart and your brain and your gut issues get cleaned up because you
It's
know.
true. I am witness of that. Like,
Me too.
you guys, my gut was so screwed up. I was not having a bowel movement once a week, maybe. Like, this is what was happening in the year of my divorce. Like, it was not working. And I was trying everything to push it. Like, I was trying the push method, right? Because Western medical science says, take the drugs, take the prescriptions, take all this stuff to push it all. And I'm going, no, no, no. I am plugging into the world a certain way that's making my digestive tract to just stop. Like, just stop. And I was just like, and then once I started to take steps forward, I'm going, oh, it's been twice this week. It's been 3 times this week. All of a sudden, now I'm not sensitive to the same foods. All of a sudden now, everything is completely working fine.
Allergies change, your asthma changes, your body
Totally.
heal itself. You don't get sick as often.
Yep.
Your brain
This is where the snowball effect is, that we don't realize when we are not authentic and not true to ourselves and we don't hold healthy boundaries. The ripple effect happens in your money. It happens in your physical body from a health perspective and everything else. And you will call in crises into your life unless you shift before, because you're getting the signals along the way. So this is really about the best boundary you can hold is extreme self-love, self-care, and don't do anything that doesn't support that.
Yes. I couldn't
Not an
agree
easy
more.
task, but something.
Well, that's why we have friends, and that's why we have coaches and therapists and chiropractors and energy healers, because that's the major sticking block for most women is we were taught either from and I was a teacher and my family's a teacher, so I've been involved with the school system and education for a long time, and we are taught that we have to do things on our own by ourselves, otherwise we're not worth anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really not how the world works. We're supposed to be working in community. It's a shared effort. We're involved with everyone else's success.
Right.
They're involved with our success. We're a tight-knit community. There's a stream, there's a flow. And if you just shift a little to the left into the flow that's already happening, into the community that loves you because they're loving people,
Totally.
that's when you succeed. If you try to do it on your own, that's the limiting belief. You're not
Right.
supposed to do this on your own. That's the lie.
Right.
The truth is, we are all here for the joint success of everyone.
Yep. Totally get it.
Yep. It's not me against you, it's me and you.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, what a great conversation today. And everyone watching, you know what? Let us just help you on the next right step. And, whether you look for Rita for one-on-one coaching on the relationship side, or me one-on-one coaching on the money side, you can definitely get to where it is that you desire to be. You can reach me at juliemurphy.com. And by all means, I will put below, I am giving away a free copy of my book, because I want to help people along the way. And I just want you guys to actually get there in a healthy and supportive way. So all you got to do is pay for the shipping. And Rita, how does everyone get a hold of you?
Well, the best way to find me is at 𝘰𝑡𝑎�ＨickmanCoaching.com. But I'm all over Facebook, like all the time. So if you type in Rita Hickman, I do live streams every day. I do group programs. And the next one that's coming up, I'm really excited about. And if women want to get involved while we're working out the bugs, they're going to get a really good price for it. It's a 7-week program. Me and one of my favorite psychics, Jenny Oster, is going to be co-hosting it with me. And it's where on every week for 7 weeks, we work on a different area of your life to unpack the emotions that keep you stuck. And there isn't a lot of drama. It's not about drama. It's about regulating and getting the energy off your system instead of harboring it. So it's very scientifically focused, based on body mind tools and trauma tools, where every week we're going to shine a flashlight on a different area of your life, clean up what's around it. And then by the end of 7 weeks, you should have this stuff nailed. You won't have unicorns and ponies, but what you will have is these will be habits in your life of where as soon as you notice something, you regulate yourself. As soon as an emotion comes up, you bring yourself back to your highest self instead of getting trapped in that ego, worry, not good enough emotion self.
Yep. Totally agree.
So if they're interested in that program, it's 𝘰𝑡aHickmanCoaching.com/7 and then a dash and week, the word week. So 𝘰𝑡aHickmanCoaching.com/7-week.
Beautiful. And you deserve to be on it with Rita, because we will get to this next right step in each and every one of our lives.
Yeah,
Love
you
you.
just need a little bit of help. You just need a little bit of help. And if you want to get to know me better, just look me up, and you'll start to see how I work and how it works for the women around me. The next 7-week program we're doing starts Monday, so it's coming up fast. So if you want to be a part of it, then join now. It's totally worth it.
Great stuff, everybody.
A couple grand. Yeah, it'll go up to a couple grand the next time that we do it. Right now we're keeping it, it's like a beta testing.
Beautiful. That's great. Awesome. Well, I love you all, and come back next Thursday because we are here, 9 a.m. Central. Thanks, everybody.
Julie.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.